Good morning. This is David Thompson with the Green Clean Institute, and I'm pleased that you're here to join us for our second in the 11-part series of Environmental Health for Education. This is sponsored by the Center for Education Safety of Missouri and the Missouri School Board Association. Normally I would be joined by Paul Finnewald from these two associations. However, due to our schedules, we are not able to join each other, so I will be doing my part and he will be presenting this to you on our regular scheduled time. So what I'd like to do is start our webinar today by reminding you that if you missed our one from the last week, or last month I should say, you can see the introduction and webinar 1 on our website where it is archived. Not always is everybody able to see these every month, so we've archived them here for you. And for those of you that are taking your test with the program, you will be able to do that from this position. So let's get right into our program for today. What I'd like to ask you is, the question here is your school really healthy? Now I know that that's going to bring out a number of different questions. And so I want to ask, is it really healthy? Or is your school just clean? Now I know that that is like, well, what's the difference between the two? And there's a very big difference between just being clean and healthy. And as we go through this webinar series, you should learn what the differences are, and we'll help explain that along the way. Now, as we get started with this, these are public school buildings back some years ago, as you can probably tell. So where did actually public cleaning get started? When did we start cleaning public buildings? And these are two school buildings from, I believe, the early 1900s, maybe the late 1800s. So what was the purpose of cleaning whenever we started there? Was there a real health issue? Or was it just to get the sand out, to roll the tumbleweeds out, get the cobwebs out of the corner? You know, cleaning at that time was very rudimentary to even say the least. Question is, who did it? Who was responsible for taking care of these facilities? As you can see, the facilities grew. The requirements had to grow. Did the equipment grow? Did the responsibility grow? Who was in charge of doing this, and how were they educated? Well, as we went through this and we've gotten a little bit more precise with what we do, as you can see, we moved into the generation of color. What were they using at this time? How did chemicals and how did equipment, how did all of the products come into effect, and how did these change? Well, we're going to look at that a little bit. And I had a recent visit to the an international trade show, and I was very impressed to find this Museum of Clean. Now, Don Aslett out of Idaho put this on, and he has a whole museum of all of the old items and the chemicals, and even talks about the procedure. So if you really want to learn some of this information about how did we come about cleaning public buildings, what did we use and how did we do it, you can find it there. Now, why do I bring this up? The reason that we wanted to start here is we want to look at the issue of what's really going on. And this is the buildings have changed. Now, this is a picture of the local hospital in the town of where I live. And obviously the building has changed. Also, some of the issues have changed. What is that issue? We've got better hospitals taking care of us on the end of our health cycles, or when something really does happen. What hasn't changed is our focus. The focus is still on taking care of those kids, those people that work in these buildings, the visitors that come to these buildings. Our public school systems have changed quite dramatically. The buildings have changed, but the focus really hasn't. It's still about providing a healthy public facility for them to use. Now, what you pay has. Now, this is an example. I'm sure that not everybody's going to have exactly the same thing, but I just wanted to use this as an example. In the town of where I live, the public school system used to take this amount. This was my taxes. Now, recently, it has grown to this amount. So what I pay has definitely changed. Why do I want to make a point about this? As a public citizen using these facilities, I'm more concerned about what happens there. I'm paying a larger dollar amount. It's part of my money that I pay. And the reason is these are now public facilities. They always have been, but they're becoming more and more. Educational facilities today are some of the largest community gathering places that we have in many communities. In addition to that, many schools are actually renting out their cafeterias, their classrooms, their gymnasium for public events. On the other hand, our schools are welcoming the community to use them. What does this mean? This means that now what's happening is we're having more use of this facility. It's being used almost 24/7, 365 days. There's very little time for us to do any maintenance of that school building outside of the evening or maybe the weekend. The summer schools now take over a large part of our time in summer. That time that we used to clean the building up and get it clean for the next year doesn't exist. You've seen this before. Many students coming through overcrowded classrooms. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. The issue still is we bus the kids in, they transport in, we're crowding them into buildings, and what's going on? You can see in this picture here where the student is wiping his nose. You can see they're on the floor, they're touching with their bare feet. This is not uncommon. If you're in an elementary, you'll see this all the time. So what is happening here? Well, the reason I'm talking about this is because I want to impress upon you that 1/3 of your community goes through a public school building every day that it's open. If that facility is open, there's kids going through it, the community is going through it, because it's not just the students, it's not just the teachers, it's the vendors that come in, it's the people that use that facility during the day, it's the visitors come to the game the next week, or the community fair, or the science fair, the art class, the theater. You get the picture. We're using these facilities all the time. And what is happening? Why am I concerned about that? Well, there's these little guys here that just grab hold of every fomite that is in the building. They transfer from item to item. They grab onto everything. And as 1/3 of this community is coming through this facility, these little germy guys are grabbing hold of and they're transporting out of the school all through the community and even to the hospital. Now, we're not going to talk about what happens at the hospital and how it comes back today, but if it's coming from the school and going to the hospital, or it's going to your home, or it's going to the local restaurant or the daycare, you get my picture. We're here to fight these guys that transport from place to place as 1/3 of that community goes through. Now, crowded issues are becoming more and more a large item of concern when it comes to environmental services. You see here in 2011, we reached 7 billion people. It's now close to the end of 2012, and I know we're over the 7 billion. The question is, why does it make a difference? Well, it makes a difference because what happens now in a foreign country to yours is going to happen it can come to your doorstep right now. So no matter where in the world that you are, what's happening in another section of the world is very likely to come onto your doorstep very soon. And as we grow, as more people become crowded, and as this situation becomes more of an issue, the question is, will this population growth stop? Well, the verdict's still out on that one. But I can tell you that they're looking in another 80 years that we're going to be somewhere in that 9 to 10,000 or 10 billion range. Why is this important? Because the more crowded that we get, the more the issues compound, and the more that we in environmental services have to know what we're doing to protect the health of not only those folks, but ourselves as well. When it comes to environmental services and health, I want to impress upon you a large subject of concern that is growing. There's 34 million people in the U.S. today that have symptoms that have been diagnosed of this illness. 300 million of the population is actually diagnosed with some kind of a symptom from this illness. And those people that have this illness, 70% of them also have allergies from mold and pollen and ragweed and all of these things. Now, what does this mean? Well, when it comes to our student population, 1 in 10 of the children that are walking through the halls, going to gym, going to the lunchroom, all have this illness. They're the ones seeing the nurse. 1 in 12 of the adults that are walking through these same facilities have the same illness. This is where we get our 34 million people that are diagnosed with this. What is this illness? It's asthma. Asthma has been diagnosed in 34 million cases. 300 million of the people that are walking around right now have symptoms of it. So this is 1 in 10 children, 1 in 12 adults, and 70% of them are now having some type of an allergy that goes along with this. And if you're one of those folks, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And as a chronic asthmatic myself, this is a personal message, and it is growing. So what I was saying here is the issue here is that at least 1 in 10 of us that walk the planet today are dealing with this every day. We have the symptoms, and the air quality of the buildings that we go into is very, very important for us. Now, the Department of Health and Senior Services has an asthma prevention and control policy, and this was put out just recently, and I want to show you a couple of things from their presentation. Now, what you'll notice here is this is going into the ethnicity of Missouri, and this was from 2007, and you can see 12% white, 15% African American, 16, almost 17% Hispanic, and then there's 12% other. So on all of this is 12.6% of us as late as 5 years ago had asthma, was having to deal with this, and we can't get rid of it. This is with us for a lifetime. So if you're in that group, this is what you need to be concerned with. Now, if you're a custodian and you're in that group, and let's say if you're African American, you are 4 more times likely to be hospitalized with asthma conditions than white folks. But you really want to look at the fact that we have an issue, and being recognized in that issue is the thing I want to put across. When I looked at this study, they identified asthma triggers. Now, asthma triggers are those things that if you're an asthmatic, you're already going to have an issue. That's not what's going to cause it. It's going to trigger an asthma attack. And listed in this study as number 1 in occupational issues is cleaning solutions. The cleaning solutions that we use every day to go out there and do our cleaning. Sick building syndrome is a leading cause, a leading issue that is caused by improper air quality and cleaning techniques all over the globe. And this becomes an issue of what are we breathing in? What is being breathed in during the day, after cleaning or before cleaning? And here are some of the things, and we use HEPA filters that will deal with this issue. Now, along with this comes these illnesses that we talked about. Acute issues are those short-term ailments that just really plague us and nag at us. You know, the coughing, the sneezing, the watering eyes, the headaches. This is because of the indoor air quality that we're breathing and our problems. These normally turn into chronic or long-term illnesses. This is where the asthmatics like myself have these issues. We have to use our inhalers. We have to have breathing devices. We have shortness of breath. So it's those small things that you deal with that turn into large things. So along comes the green cleaning industry and says, we've got an answer for all of this. We're going to take care of this. There's a litigation out there. And all of this is well and good. But the problem is that what happens with a lot of the suppliers, a lot of the services out there, a lot of the in-house programs is we just get a chemical, we get a program, and we say it's green. Well, folks, I'm sorry to tell you that that's not true. That's not the way it works. It's not what happens, because cleaning leaves an imprint on our society. If we don't clean right and we don't do the right thing, we're going to leave an imprint that in some cases is very lasting. But green cleaning itself has only been around since around 2006. This is when it really started to gain steam and really people started recognizing. So if you really look at this whole industry is still a green baby. We're only about 6 years old. And in the lifespan of what we're talking about, green cleaning is just learning how to get around and do some things. And to that point, I like to say that some people are just crawling and just getting used to what's going on and figuring out what they're trying to do. They really haven't got it decided yet. Now others, they're on a program and they're learning what to do, and with a little bit of help and guidance, they're figuring out that they can make a few steps here and there. It doesn't cost them more money and it's not more time consuming. Still others are leading the way. They're learning how. They've already learned how to walk, and they're still an infant. They're still learning, but they're walking ahead of some of the rest of us. So we all are in this path together. And what I want to tell you at this point is there is no finish line. You haven't just gotten to be green. You're not just there. You still have a lot to learn. This is organic. This is always changing. Now, to that point, if you remember our last webinar that we did, there was 3 points that we wanted to make. And this is information, education, and communication. You need to pull these 3 things in and to make your program. So the first one I'd like to talk about is information. Gathering information is important, and I do that by a number of different sources. And Eddie Hedrick of the Department of Health and Senior Services, he is the Emerging Infections Coordinator there. And what Eddie and I was talking about is the influenza virus and the spread of it this year. We're just now getting ready to start our flu season, but what Eddie wanted to point out here is that usually in November, we're not seeing very many cases. There's not a number of this going on. So the problem? Well, the problem is already in November, we're seeing what we usually see in December, and we really are seeing an increase of the severity and the frequency. And what Eddie and I was talking about is the fact that we're both remembering the 2004 influenza flu season, and if something doesn't happen, this is going to be a season that will probably rival that. So being aware and being educated on this subject and gathering your information is going to be very important. I did mention education, and education comes in a number of different forms. And here this month, a couple of weeks ago, you saw that we had the International Hand Washing Week. It was December the 2nd through the 28th, and there's many champions of hand washing. And to that point, we have our own Hand Washing 101. You'll see we advise you to apply hand soap to one hand, put water on the other, scrub your hands together for 20 seconds, rinse until that soap is removed, clean and dry your cleaned hands with paper towels, and then use the paper towel to turn off the water, open the door, and leave. Hand washing is still, always will be, and is one of the keystones to public health. Now, Lynn Bergman, right here in the town I live in, with the Rollo Technical Institute, runs a class for Health Science Academy here at the Rollo Technical Center. And what they do is they have a foundation that focuses on social health, human development, and the prevention of diseases and community health. And to that point, what they do is they go around to the schools and they're talking with the students to bring about the idea. And this past week with the hand washing issue, they were in force showing people how to wash their hands and take care of themselves. And this comes into the communication. Education and information are important, and they're not any good unless we take and use that and actually do communication. So Shelby and Justice were at the high school, and they were presenting their booth and talking about hand washing and presenting the issues of pandemic flus and what hand washing can do to help mitigate these issues. And I really championed that. And so I had the opportunity to go to their Health Science Academy class and work with them and talk with them a little bit about how cleaning and health really work together. Now, these students are coming up through school, juniors and seniors, some sophomores, and what they're doing is they're working to be healthcare professionals at some point. And what they did is they made these shirts that says "Got Soap" and "Hand Washing 101," and I really do appreciate that. And what I want to point out here is that you need to get out in the community. There's plenty of people that want to embrace this issue and just get out there and tell them and communicate that we have a joint effort and that there's a reason behind what we're doing. Because what does all of this come to? This comes to what is green cleaning. What is green cleaning, and what have I been talking about for the last 20 minutes? Well, I want to tell you it's not just the chemicals alone. It's not just doing getting the latest product. It is what is happening to the people. This is what green cleaning is about. It's about the people, the frontline workers and everyone else. It's not just the products that we buy. It's not the mop, the broom, the floor mat. It's all about human health. How do we affect human health by what it is that we do each and every day? It's not the equipment. It's not the vacuum cleaner. It's not the floor machine. It's not the riding auto scrubber. It's not that duster that we use. It's about that built environment. That environment that we are all living in and breathing that indoor air quality that could be or may not be. You know, it's not just about how we manage all of these things. It's not about getting the latest management technique and knowing what we're doing. It's really all of these things. It's everything that I've just talked about all rolled into one to mitigate and to reduce the health impacts of the people that are working in this environment, and that is the frontline worker. Now, a number of years ago, I coined a phrase. It says, just to say that a building is clean does not mean that it is healthy. But if a building is healthy, it is clean. This comes to the science of cleaning and what our purpose really is, not to make the building look good, but to make it environmentally safe. So to that point, I'd like to impress upon you that there are two focuses that we really feel are important to green cleaning. The first one of those two is what we breathe. What we breathe does not have the immediate impacts that everybody talks about, the sensational. These are long-term things, happen over a long time, but you'll know those symptoms when you scratch your eyes and have the runny nose. The second is what we touch. What we touch is second to what we breathe in green cleaning. Both are important, but if we had to put a priority on it, it's what I'm breathing before what I touch. Now, I'm very happy that you're doing your part. I know that we're doing our part, but what I'd like to ask, are you really doing all that you can do? Is there more that you can do in both of these areas? Is there more that any of us can do? Do we have the proper benchmarks to guide us along the path? We have a program at the Institute. Almost every state nowadays has some kind of a program, whether it be through a school or by the state legislators. Everybody has a program. Are you using a program? And do you know where you're going? How are you keeping up with the issues? That's what this webinar series is all about, is how to keep you up with the issues so you know which way to go, which direction you're going, and some way to actually decide, where am I going? You have choices. The path that you choose is going to be your own. You're going to go at your own speed. We're all at a different place. We're all moving a little differently. But as long as we're moving down that path is what we're all about. This webinar and many others throughout the year will be archived on this website. You can take your webinar, view it, and take the test. It's always there. You take it at your own speed. If Paul were here, he would be saying thank you, as I am going to say thank you for joining me today. I hope it didn't get too long-winded. I have a tendency to get that way when I start talking about this issue. Next month, we'll be talking about greening infection prevention and how this impacts your school and how it can impact your life as a frontline worker, and maybe even some information you can take home with you. I want to say thank you very much for joining me and Paul, and we hope to see you again at our next webinar next month. For right now, have a good holiday season, and we'll talk to you next year.